This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Frontiersman Gear. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Frontiersman Gear, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting episode of Talk is Sheep. I am sitting here today in 150 Mile House, British Columbia, in the workshop of my good friend, Dan Lay. You guys, if you haven't heard the name Dan Lay in the world of predator management, wildlife control, conservation, you've been living under a rock. This guy has seen and done more things in his life as it pertains to wildlife management and conservation, and in particular, predator management and control, than most people could ever even fathom. He has pursued, trapped, killed not only bears, cougars, and wolves, but he has done so for all three of those species that have mauled, maimed, wounded, and also killed human beings. He's been on a couple of grizzly studies over the decades, a couple of wolf studies, 3 cougar studies, one of which directly pertained to a struggling sheep population that he actually made a significant difference on. And then, just decades and decades of crazy, intense predator management experiences. And there's so much that we can talk about that we're actually going to do this as a series of episodes. So today, Dan, I think we kind of just wanted to get into how it was that you got into this crazy world of predator management, wildlife conservation, and how you made a life doing it.
Okay. I guess we'll start back, right? My father was predator control officer for the province of BC, Region 1, which is lower mainland up into the central interior. And his job was to deal with cougar, bear, wolves, protecting livestock and human safety. And growing up down there in the Fraser Valley, if he was away, once I got old enough to drive, if my father wasn't around to deal with a cougar complaint, they'd contact me, and I'd take a couple of dogs and deal with the complaints when he wasn't around. And then once I got old enough, I'd hunt on my own. That was training dogs and so on. I would have been about 14 when my first pup, that was about a year and a half old, treated his first cougar along with my father. And I always wanted to get into the predator control section of the Fish and Wildlife, the provincial government, but you had to have 2 years of college, BCIT, Malaspina colleges, and then a couple of years of training and so on. And I'd had issues with school in my day. Once I failed grade 1 twice, they figured that there must be something wrong. The only way they could read what I wrote was in a mirror, because it was upside down and backwards. So school wasn't really an easy step. They ended up making me the janitor's helper. So when the school bell rang, I'd go under the stairs, and the janitor would lay out the day's work and clean the schoolyard or set up chairs for the auditorium or wash floors. And I did that for a number of years. And it took a while, but I found a Dick and Jane book, which was probably a grade 1 book, out in the yard, and the janitor helped me to write it. He gave me time off from my janitor work and give me a hand, and I wrote a sentence eventually. My first sentence was, "Look at Spot run." So I was pretty proud of that. And I decided that I better start trying to figure out something to get through school. And I eventually graduated, which I tell people, if I gave you a book and said, okay, I want you to rewrite this so you can read it in a mirror, how long would that take you? And they all just cringe. But I had trained myself to look at stuff and then write it backwards to me, and away it went. Once I did graduate, and I wanted to get into the predator control provincial government, but I still needed that schooling. So I was not getting my head around to get through college. That would have going to be a tough show. But one day I was out on the trap line, and I'd go out for 3 or 4 days at a time, and I come in, and my father said that the Fish and Wildlife or Conservation Officer Service wanted me to come to Vancouver Island, basically to hunt cougar. So I got a hold of them, and they wanted me to come over. So I got on the ferry, and I had about a 2-foot long by a foot high, foot wide grub box, and I had a couple cans of sardines, a couple cans of beans, and $35.
Living
And
high on
away
the
I
hog.
went. Yes, I was styling because I would, between my cabin and stuff like that, I'd live in the truck. But anyway, I get over there and find the office and get up there, and it's a little scary in the sense that, you know, you're getting into a whole different world from what I was used to. So, as far as people and politics. So I get up to the boss's office and introduce myself, and he seemed like a gruff old guy, but he was really a good guy, nice guy. We got to be really good friends. But anyway, he hands me a Bible and a sheet of paper, and he was I don't know what you call it, justice of the peace or something, that he could swear people in
Yep.
for the government. So he hands me the paper, and he hands me the Bible and this piece of paper, and he says, okay, read this out. So I'd been out of school for a few years, so reading wasn't really that easy. So I started reading, and it said, I, Dan Lay, do hereby swear to, and then the words just got bigger and bigger. And I'm standing there staring at this paper going, I didn't say anything, but I'm just standing there looking like I'm a little slow. And he reaches up across the desk and he rips the paper out of my hands. And it's all crumpled up. And I'm thinking, okay, like I'm a lot nicer now than I used to be. But
There's no doubt.
I've got this big, thick Bible in my hand, and that's going to be a club. Like, I didn't come over here to fucking read. So I'm getting mad. He uncrumples the paper and he says, repeat after me. Okay. So he goes, I, Dan Lay, do hereby swear. And then he goes, blah, 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 blah. Sign here. And that's probably illegal. But so I signed it. And then he gets up and shakes my hand and taps me on the shoulder, and there you go. And I said, okay, what do you want me to do? And he says, you get out there and kill everything with teeth. Oh, okay. But they'd had, I think it was 2 or 3 attacks on people, mauled, and there might have been one killed prior to me getting there too. But they, the government hunter that they had the schooling, but there'd been a number of sheep and goats and all that killed over 2 years, and they hadn't been producing the cats, and they were trying contractors and stuff like that. So it wasn't working, and they wanted me to do it, but I didn't realize the amount of politics involved. Um, the cat hunters down there were fighting to try to get the bounty back, and the government wasn't going to do that. But between the sheep producers and the cat hunters and some of the politicians, the municipalities, they were in a big battle with the government to do something to protect the producers from cats and the threat to people.
Mm.
So I kind of got handed into the middle of this, and I didn't realize it until my boss told me, it had been a week I'd been there, that we're going to go to a meeting down South Island and to discuss the predator control and so on. So okay, so away we go. We get down there, and it's kind of a community hall deal that there's probably 100 people in it, and these are all cougar hunters, sheep producers, hobby farm people, everybody. And so they get up and they have different people speaking about how much damage, how much losses they're having, and that nothing's getting done. The same cat's killing over and over again. So finally, my boss gets up and said, things have changed. We've got a new man now here that's going to solve the problems. And at that time, I was just turned 20, skinny kid, basically. And everybody, ha ha ha, boo. And that, I wasn't, I got thrown into this, and I didn't realize how rattled everybody was.
Mm.
But I was at the job, so that's how I got started.
I'd imagine a reaction like that would have fired you up a little bit. Back in those days. Because you had such control over your temper when you were a young man.
Yes. I've worked on that, though. That brings up temper, I guess. There was the conservation officer from Duncan phoned one afternoon and said there's been a sheep killed down here, and it's I think it was the president or one of the directors in the Domestic Sheep Breeders Association. And I said, okay, well, I'll phone them and get directions and go down there and get the cat.
Was this your first cat complaint?
It was one of my first.
Okay.
It was the first one, I believe, in that area.
Okay.
And it turned out to be the president's sheep.
Perfect.
So I phone him, and I explained who I was and that I understand you had a sheep. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, how do I get there? I'll get there in the morning and pick him up, get out of there. And no, there's no point in you coming down. He said, I've had the top 4 cougar hunters in the whole country here for half a day, and they couldn't get it. So what chances are you going to have being another 24 hours behind it? So don't waste your time. And I said, well, it's my job, so that's what I want to come down and have a look. So he grumbled a bit more, and so away I went. I went down the next morning, and I meet him, and he shows me where the sheep had been penned up. He penned them up at night, and this ewe had been taken overnight. He didn't have a kill, but the sheep was there that night before evening, and it wasn't in the morning. So he phoned the locals, and the season was closed. So, but the government was so gun shy about trying to stop the illegal hunt that they just ignored it because everybody was getting hit. So anyway, I get there and I'm walking my two dogs around the side of the pen, and I could see him over in the corner of the other field, and him and the neighbor are talking loud enough that, look at this idiot type of thing. And I thought, whatever. So pretty soon, and it was all just bare ground desert, and the two dogs, their tails started going up. They started to open, and they're cold trailing down, and they go down into this little rock draw, and they only went probably 300 yards. And typically they'll trail and then jump the cat, and there'll be they'll change their voices. They'll run it up a tree. Well, in this case, they were cold trailing, and they were steady barking, and then they shut up for a second and started to tree. So I thought, well, that's different. Usually they jump it and chase it. So I went down the top of the ridge, and I could look down into this little canyon, and it was and where I come from, there was no arbutus trees. The arbutus trees are only on the island that I know of. And there was about 2.5 foot at the base of this arbutus tree, and it went up 10 feet, and then a big branch, it forked. And I'm standing there looking down, and the dogs are basically standing on the dead ewe, and they're treeing, and this good-sized tom is laying up in the crotch of this arbutus tree, and the bark on these arbutus trees is red, almost the color of a cougar. So I'm looking down there, and there's the problem. So I went back. I had a pup in the truck I wanted to bring down to show it the cougar. So I'm walking back, and the farmer comes running over, cuts me off, and well, what are you going to do now?
You thought you couldn't find the cat?
No, he thought I was going home.
Yep.
Or going to go look for my dogs because they're gone. So, because he couldn't hear them, they were down over the bluff. So I said, well, before I shoot that cat, I'm going to bring a pup down to see it. And he's stomping along beside me, and I just kept walking, and he cuts me off. He says, what'd you say? And I said, well, before I shoot that cougar that killed your sheep, I'm going to bring a pup down. And
Mine was
you
just
got
blown.
him? Yeah. And I said, well, that's my job. And I just kept walking. So I wanted to go around a different way. A typical sheep farmer, they got 35 gates. So I went around a different way, and I got to the truck, and I got the pup out. I think I had one or maybe two. And I pet them up and that, and they're a little bit car sick. They're like 4 months, 5 months old. And pet them up, took them to a bit of a pothole, give them a drink, and then I wandered around back through, and I went to where the dogs started to trail, and I walked the track a little bit, and they could smell it, and I wanted them to open a bit, and I held them on the leash so they couldn't go, and they could smell it. They wanted to go, so I waited till they get them to bark a little bit, and then I'd let them walk a bit, and then we could hear the hounds, so I let them go, and away they went. And no big deal. The longer they can sit down there with the real dogs and see the cat and tree, because it's a good opportunity. They could actually see it right there.
You bet.
So I walk down, and there's probably 6-8 people at the tree. Different. I don't really know where I am in the world of roads and people. So I get there, and they're all looking at the cougar and happy. And so I tied the dogs back and shot the cat out. And it was kind of neat because there was at least 2 cougar hunters there. And I wondered how everybody got there. Like, I never saw anybody, but I guess the rancher phoned people and it went through so they probably couldn't believe it. They wanted to actually see.
See it for themselves.
So, yeah. And here was this lady, and her name was Joan Yates, and I didn't know anybody. And she walks up to me and shakes my hand. And, oh, nice lady. I find out that she was famous down there for cougar hunting, and she had done a lot of cats and stuff like that. So I said, okay, well, I better get going. And I reached down to pick the cat up to start hiking back. And Joan says, well, the road's right here. I'll give you a ride. So walked about, I don't know, 20, 30 yards. And here's the road. I didn't have an idea of a road there. Anyway, she gave me a ride back. And that was all good. I thought maybe now they know or have an idea what I am.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the country had been there and around the outside of the pen in the dust and the dirt, it was just pounded with dog tracks and people tracks. These other guys trying to get the dogs to go.
Well,
But
that's the thing. It's not just they knew what you were. It's what they now knew what your dogs
dogs,
were.
that's right, because these are a whole different world
Yep.
of
Which we'll get
dogs.
into at some point.
Yep. So I get in the truck, everybody's happy, and I go home. That night, the CO from Duncan phoned and he said, oh, he says, you made the paper. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. I said, that'd be good. No, not really. And I said, well, what's the matter? He said, I'll read it to you. So he reads this out. He said it was the front page, and the papers had been playing. It was a big deal because they could have about every other day another story of a cougar either mauled somebody a month ago or dead sheep here and there, or somebody's dog got killed. So it was selling papers too, and how much of the government was a waste of time. So he reads the paper and he says, yeah, they had a sheep kill and they called the big deal new government hunter. He showed up, spent the day here, couldn't do anything. So he called the locals. They come down and got the cat right away.
Go boy.
So I decided that maybe this isn't the job for me if I've got to put up with that kind of garbage. So I jumped in the truck, and my plan was to catch the late ferry to head back to my trap line because I can't do this. And by the time I get finished discussing stuff with other people, if I might have to hide for a while. So anyway, I roared down back to the complaint and knocked on the door. Nobody came, and went to the back door, and nobody came then either. Vehicles were home, but I couldn't talk to anybody because I was going to clear it up and then get
Peacefully.
on the boat.
Yes.
What's that?
You were going to clear it up peacefully. Just have a calm, collected, cool discussion.
No. No. So, and thankfully nobody came to the door. So I left my mark on the lawn and left. And I got back home and I calmed down enough that I really wanted to do this job, but maybe I got my point across. So the next morning, the rancher phoned. Oh, he says, how you doing? Oh, good. Yeah, he said, I imagine you heard about the paper. And I said, yeah. I said, are you home? Yeah, but I got to go to town. I said, okay, well, could I meet you in town? We'll have a coffee. Well, I'm pretty busy. Okay. I can come anytime. Well, no, he said, I'm going to be pretty busy. He said, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the paper and straighten out this bullshit. He said, they just printed what they wanted to keep the going. He said, I'm going to tell them exactly what you did and who you are.
Mm.
So I said, okay. And the next paper come out and they'd corrected the whole thing. And that opened the door for the country to realize that there is help. So, and over the years, dealing with a number, it's probably around a dozen different files, and they're not all recorded in the sense or documented to hang on, because a lot of the stuff was, it seemed to disappear when a person got attacked or mauled or whatever.
Interesting.
There's only a portion of them.
Hmm.
But of all of those, I never missed the cat. I removed every cat that touched a person.
I don't
eh,
know if there's anybody else that could actually say that.
no,
I don't
no,
think there is.
no, not so far anyway. There's a lot more excuses made as to why you don't get the cat, and that is it's too long before you get there. It's too hot. It's too cold. There's lanolin in the sheep. There's the pollen. There's a million excuses why they don't produce the problem cat that's killing livestock or dealing with people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why these dogs are so much different. When you get a call that someone's been mauled or killed, the pressure on me, because you're only as good as the first time you fail, you're a bum,
You bet.
and the stress, um, it's up there, but you have to deal with it. And I can go there and everybody thinks, geez, this guy, he can produce and he's a hero, but it's the dogs.
Yeah.
And those dogs that are doing that job, I'll be there when they're born, and I may have to help the odd one get on a tit and stuff like that and raise them up. And then you take them out on a deal like that, and they make you look good.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's worth a lot.
They made your career.
Yeah. Yes, they made it, and I just fumbled along. I've told people if they could drive and shoot, they wouldn't need me. So yeah, you got to have your respect for your animals.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
you go to a call and it's the RCMP or some upstanding citizen says the cougar ran through my yard and down through there, and you get there and put the dogs out and you walk around and the dogs say nothing's here.
Yeah.
You got to go back and tell an RCMP member that, sorry, it wasn't a cougar. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. But the dogs say no. And if you're wrong and that cat comes in and hurts somebody or kills the neighbor's dog,
Mm-hmm.
you're now a bum. But I haven't been wrong there either. The dogs, when they say it isn't, it isn't.
Incredible.
So,
I honestly, I don't think most people could say that about their cougar hounds. There are some exceptional cougar
no.
hounds out there, but
Yep.
I don't know that there's very many that are of the caliber that yours are. I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. It's true. I've seen them in
No.
action, guys.
Yeah. Like I said, the first time you fail, it doesn't matter how many successes you have. If you fail, you're a bum, because there's a lot of people, jealousy and so on,
You bet.
that come into play. But like the stress, the dogs will pick up off of that.
You bet.
So they get, it's almost like they get more serious because what they're picking up off of me, that this is a big deal. We got to produce. And I'm not taking any young dogs, inexperienced dogs on that. I'm taking the A team, and they know it's time that they've got to produce.
I think I'm bypassing a little bit. We'll circle back to some of the stuff that I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about, kind of more elementary stuff, getting into your career. But
Yeah.
on that vein of
We got too far ahead.
yeah, but on that vein
Yeah.
of trusting the dogs and what they pick up off of you and the pressure and them almost recognizing the seriousness and the intensity of the situation. You had one really serious call that you went to. Was it in Gold River?
Mhm.
Where you kind of, I don't want to give away too much without you telling the story, but you discussed how seriously the dogs took their job and something that they
Yeah.
came across during that situation,
Mhm.
and how the dogs were almost taken aback by what it was that they saw.
Yeah.
I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but that's such a cool story,
Yeah.
a sad story, but
Mhm.
it speaks to what you were just talking about.
Yep. It's funny you bring that up, but those feelings, they don't come back, but you start feeling what I felt then,
You're
which is
reliving it.
a little different. Um,
Because you guys, Dan doesn't have feelings, just so you know. Hard, cold, and emotionless. Dan Lay has no feelings.
I'm still working on that too.
Yeah.
But back in, I think it was 87, I tried to be nice.
How'd that go?
Yeah. The worst 15 minutes of my life.
Ah,
It was
damn right.
horrible. Jeez. I'll never try that again.
Just not even worth it.
No, it didn't work. That particular call, it was around the 14th of July. I was on the roof of my Mickey Mouse dog kennel, patching the roof, and Sue, my wife, come out and hollered, said there's the RCMP on the phone. So I go in, and they said there's been a 7-year-old girl killed by a cougar in Gold River. So, okay, I said, I'm coming. And they said there'll be a fixed wing at the harbor in an hour. And I said, okay, I'm going to be on it. And the day before, I'd been on a call at outside of Parksville. Hobby farmer was walking down his driveway from the barn, and he heard something. He turned around, and there was a cougar, which is unusual for it to run at him. Usually they'll sneak up, but it was running down his driveway at him. And he turned around, and he had enough time to get through the gate, the little picket fence thing, and he dove into the house through the door, and he kicked the door closed behind him, and the cougar hit the door, and then it wandered off. So he called, so I went. I got there, turned the dogs loose, and they caught the cat right away, and it was in the shellal, which is it's like trying to fight your way through a bed spring. It's twisted up brush, and the dogs had caught him on the ground, and they were holding him, and that's the idea. But the cat, it was so thick, the cat got a hold of one of them, so they bailed on it and were stretching him. And I got in there and put the cat down and picked him up, and I'm heading back. And I noticed one of the hounds, the back end, he was blood. So I dropped the cat and I got up to him, and the cat had opened up his nut sack, and one of his nuts were hanging down about 6 inches. And I didn't want that tangled in the brush. He didn't think there was anything wrong, but I picked him up, packed him back, got him on the front seat, and roared to the vet, and they cut that one off and then stitched him back up. So he's one of my main dogs, and now I got this call. So on my way to the plane, I stopped at the drugstore and got a pamper, and I taped the pamper on him so that it wouldn't tear the stitches out. Got on the plane and away we went. And we get close to the town and that. I said, I want to fly a circle around the attack site to get a look at what the ground and that's like. and it wasn't far from the pulp mill. So we're making the loop, and the pilot says to me, he says, "You're not going to get that cat." And I said, "Oh, really? Why is that?" He said, "I used to work at that pulp mill." And he said, "That ground in the valley is probably 3 feet deep of sulfur soaked into the ground." He said, "That's going to be tough for a dog to smell with that much sulfur soaked in." So that really helps with the stress. So we land, and the the RCMP Suburban sitting there. We loaded the dogs, went up, and there'd been something like 100 people had walked through the bush because the cougar had killed a little girl and then drug her into the timber, and they'd combed the bush to find her, which they did, and removed her. So now we've got a cat with all them people over top of it and moving it. So I got the dogs, and I'm walking them down the road, and I'm having them heeled in just so they stay parallel with me. Walking down the road, and there's about a 3-foot patch of blood. And typically with livestock or domestic dogs and that killed by cougar, that doesn't affect them. They know they go. We got to this 3-foot patch of blood. They all stopped. They wouldn't come near it. They made a big loop around it, and so did I, but they were just rattled. They didn't like that at all. So I come around and got to where the cat had taken the kid into the bush, and they just exploded, and away they went.
They knew the gravity of that situation at that time. Yeah, it's go time.
Yeah. And they sulfur, not 100 people over top of the track or whatever, it didn't matter.
Yep.
And with them people all going through, that cat never left. It was still right. It was probably within 100 yards of the road where they'd all walked. But and the RCMP, everybody was there, and so I tell them, just leave it alone. I don't need anybody coming in or doing anything. So the dogs are making the loop. The cat's headed in a bit of a semicircle, and before I go any further, there was another fellow made a report. He come from Vancouver, and he got a job at the pulp mill, and this was his second day at work, and he was riding his motorbike, and he pulled off the side of the highway to take a leak, and he was just going to get off the bike, and he looked, and he saw this cougar sneaking up to him. So he got back on the bike and then putted back out onto the highway. And when he looked back, it was on his taillight. So he gunned it, got to the pulp mill, and he had just bought the equipment he needed, like steel toe boots and a hard hat and all this kind of stuff. He walked into the office, put it all on the counter, and said, "Screw this, I'm going home." He thought this was a daily occurrence, I guess. So the cat had already made an attempt at an adult riding a bike. So the dogs are giving her. And they made a bit of an arc, and I cut in, and I wanted to just stay with them. And there was about a 4 or 5 foot spruce tree that had blown over, and the root wad would have been 20 feet high. And I was going to run around the end of the root wad. And as soon as I turned the corner, and it was all kind of wet and muddy, the cougar was going the other way. I was running. So we passed each other, slipping and sliding, and so I just got out of the way, and there I'm standing there, and I watched all my best friends.
Yeah.
And it just, that's my buddies.
Yeah.
And they went a couple 100 yards, and they're treed. So I let them do their thing for a bit, and I get in there, and I'm petting them up and all that kind of stuff. And I radioed the RCMP they could come in. And this tree they were treed on was about a 5-foot spruce that went up till you pretty near needed oxygen for the height. And the other growth was heavy timber, but it wasn't as high as the spruce. So you could look up the tree and you couldn't see any. There was no cat. So I had to start making circles, and I got further and further back. I'd have got back probably 100 yards, and I could finally get the angle to get up to look up at this tree.
Mm.
Now, this tree at the base would have been 5 feet. The cat was sitting up to where the tree was about a foot. He was a long ways up.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to the base of the tree, tied the dogs back, and I told the RCMP in that, no shooting. I said, it comes out, it'll be dead, but make sure none of the dogs get loose.
Yep.
So I go back, get to my place, and the cat had his head slightly turned. So I lined up and shot, and it was a head. I was aiming for his eye, and he locked up, tipped off, and he started going through, and he was locked up like a headshot does. And I thought, I ain't taking no chances because it's going to take me a while to get back to the base of the tree. So as he's looping through space, I shot again, and then he disappeared. And I went back in, and I knew he was dead, so it was no panic. So I get in there, and one of the members, the RCMP, had been called in because it was a sudden death. They had, but whatever.
Yeah.
And the RCMP all knew me. And this member is down looking at the cougar's head when I get there. And he looks up at me and he says, "How the hell do you do that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" Well, I guess he'd gone back quite a ways too to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't know but he said, Your first shot went in the eye and buried down under the hide back of the shoulder blades because of the angle the cat was on.
Yep.
And I says, Yeah. Yeah, and he says, your second shot going through space was right between the ears and out his chin.
Exactly where you were aiming.
Yeah. And I'm packing this old beat up 32 special or 30-30.
Oh, I was just going to ask you what you were shooting. Yeah.
And it, to him, that was pretty impressive.
You bet.
Yeah.
That'd be impressive to anybody.
Yeah. But, got back to the police station, and before we removed the cat, they had brought in evidence bags and that. So I opened it up, and they got to keep all this evidence stuff. And I opened up the stomach to show them that this is not, the cougars don't travel in packs, and this is the one that did it. So I opened the gut up, and there's the little girl's eyeball, her ear, and part of her scalp. So I said, let's bag this up, and we did. And we got back to the office, and then I had the head conservation officer for the northern part of the region come in to pick me up. And he had a canopy in that, so we could put the dogs in, and we're headed back to Campbell River, and I'm going to get ferried from there we got the cougar and the dogs and me back to Nanaimo, but we're going to do it the next day. So on the way back to Campbell River, I'm sitting there still just on the other side of he's driving, and all I'm doing is going over all the different steps that happened, and happy with everything except the little girl.
Yeah.
And my boss driving looks over and hollers at me, and he says, "You're nothing. You're F all." I look at him.
Thanks, bud.
And he's looking at me, and he goes, "Oh, jeepers, I'm sorry. Geez, just paranoid that I'm going to hurt him." And I didn't mean that. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't really do anything. It's your dogs. Your dogs do it." And I go, "Yeah." But I said, who do you think made them, to do what they do?
Yeah.
Oh, he says, I know. But it's just funny how different people look at, it's not the guy that's going to pull the trigger that's the hero. It's the dogs that do it
You
to
bet.
get it there,
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's something maybe we should touch on just a little bit. Like, I would like to get into the lineage of your dogs because I find that quite fascinating, and how you came about this line that you have now. But yes, you have played a huge part in your dogs becoming what they are. But we do see a lot in the world of cat hunting where you got guys basically taking all of the credit for what it is that their dogs are. And that just, man, oh man, like, I guess that could be the case in some scenarios, but for the most part, like, your dogs are what they are. You point them in the right direction when they're little, and either they've got it or they don't.
yeah.
And your dogs have got it.
Well, I've been asked, like I've got dogs that were shipped to South America for jaguar, Germany, um, where else? All across the U.S., Africa. Now, people ask me from all over the country, how do you train your dogs? Um, I don't train a dog.
Yeah.
If it's not genetic, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And at 12 weeks old, I'll take a piece of cougar hide and drag it through the bush and pick it up in different places and turn corners and stuff like that, and then put it up in a tree and then let them go. And they all do it. And that's, I guess you could say that's somewhat a training, but it's all it is exposing them to do what they like to do. And by the time they're 6 months old, I'll take a little piece of cougar hide and I'll drag it through maybe a kilometer and then leave it on the ground, come back the next day. And a lot of times I'll do it at a time when it's going to rain. And then I'll go back in the morning or the next day and pick it up so it's like it's been jumped. So now it's a fresh track going to a tree. And then I'll let these 4 to 6 month old pups out and they have to do it. And they do.
Hmm.
And that's it's no mystery, but you can look at when they're at the tree how much heart they have by
Yes.
how excited. And there's no fighting at the tree. There's no face barking.
Yeah.
Um, I had one fella coming in from the States, so we made a drag and then went back. It was like a 12-hour-old track. And so we let the dogs go and we walked up the road and there's on a side hill and you make the drag zigzag through and all that. So we walked up to where we were right below the tree. The tree was 200 yards above us. So we walked up and we could see through the timber. It opened up a bit. So we're standing there, and Kyle, my son, and I, and the client, the guy that's wanting to buy the dog, we're standing there and looking up towards see who comes into the tree first. And all of a sudden, a deer jumps up and comes waddling down the hill to us and across the road. And going, boy, that's different, because now we got them. They're a 12-year-old cougar track and a 30-second deer track, and it had been laying under the tree, like the next tree to it.
Yep.
So the dogs all come roaring in, located, and we want them to locate with air scent, and they did, and they all locked in and treed. And this cougar hunter from the States, he was standing there with his mouth hanging open. He goes, wow,
Yeah.
I wish my adults could do that. But when you have to build a line of dogs to deal with cougars that have attacked people, there's no excuse is going to justify why you didn't get it.
You bet.
And it's that was my job. My father did the same thing. He dealt with cougars that had attacked and all that kind of stuff, and the dogs have to do it.
Yeah.
The rest of the hound world, if they're guiding or just hunting and the dogs don't do it because it's the lot of it's in snow or the track's too old, that kind of thing, it doesn't matter. You can do it again another day. Um, but you're taking dogs on cougars that have been killing dogs for a month on different reserves or communities. People don't know why they're disappearing. So these cats are used to killing dogs. The other thing is somebody shot them. They wounded them. They can't climb a tree, so it's going to be a ground fight. Doing some of the research work, you'd tree a cougar, tranquilize it, put a collar on it, let it go. And then she'd have kittens, so you'd wait till the kitten's 6 months old, tree the whole outfit, put collars on, and then in a couple months you'd have to do it again to expand the collars for the I've done the worked on the research stuff, but I'm the guy that can't read and write too good. So you can tell how much of the technical stuff I do. But I've worked with some really good people, biologists and that I do the grunt work and they do the technical stuff. But after you've done this a couple of times with some of these cats, all they don't want to climb a tree. All they want to do is fight. So the one project was the biologist asked me if I could only maybe take 2 dogs so that they don't kill the cougar.
Mm.
And
We have witnessed that before,
yes,
unfortunately.
so you say, look, let's not play with the kittens as much, so we have to keep treeing them and expanding.
I just want to say, just to
Yep.
interrupt real quick, I want you guys to understand
Yeah.
that Dan Lay's dogs are, and for those of you that want to research these dogs for yourselves and maybe buy some dogs off Dan and Kyle Lay, his son, who has now taken over, the name of their outfit is Laser Kennel and Contracting, and you can find them on the good old interweb. And for anybody wanting more information, you can reach out to me. Reach out to me on social media, and I'll send you over to Dan and Kyle's page, Laser Kennel and Contracting. These hounds that he's talking about, killing cats on the ground, they do it. They're capable of it. They're 100-pound dogs. I've never seen hounds like these before. They're big suckers. Anyways, carry on. That was my little plug for you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
An example of the dogs, the Florida Panther research got a hold of me a number of years ago. Well, not that long ago, but whatever. They were they wanted DNA from as many different avenues or areas of cougar to try to see if there was anything that would match up to the Florida Panther. The Florida Panther numbers were deleted, and they figured they were inbred. They weren't reproducing, so the population was dropping. They started working with cats as far the southern tip of South America, all the way through into North America, basically the U.S., treating cats, taking sperm and blood samples to try to see if there's anything genetically could line up with close to the Florida Panthers so they could introduce it. And they got a hold of me and they said this is the northern boundary they wanted to touch base on. So I said they said they'd pay me to go tree cats. So I said, okay. They arrived, and I believe it was in July or August, and there was 3 vets and a third man, and he wasn't a vet, but he was part of the group. So we started, and I treed 28 times in 8 days, and some of them were the same tree because of the jumps and so on. But it was hot, and we were hunting in the sheep range because that's where I'd done some research stuff, so I knew some of the cat stuff. So 28 days, or 28 cats in 8 days, and the last day we went for supper. And this older fella had never really said anything the whole time. He was pretty quiet. And they'd got their samples and so on. So we're having supper, and they had the nobody had ever said anything the whole time about the dogs. They were, to them, I just thought they were just a tool, so no big deal. They're mine. So at supper, I finally asked them. I said, what do you think of the hounds? You've seen dogs all across South America, North America." And the head vet was Melanie, and she said, "We talk about it every night." And she said, "We have dealt with dogs on our private practice, and then this was the whole Florida Panther thing was a different world of dogs." But she said, "We've talked about it, and we have never seen dogs that had the ability, the physical ability, as well as the the scent, the nose. Um, they're just a whole different animal from what we've experienced across North and South America." And she said, we can't believe what they're capable of doing. And then the older fella, who hadn't been saying nothing, he says, "Well, how did you build these dogs?" So I explained that, the real basic. But every time I answered his question, he come up with another question.
Hmm.
And I'd never had anybody that understood the breeding best to the best and not inbreeding and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into how I got these dogs to where they are later on.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this went on for probably an hour. He kept asking questions as how I bred this to that, and what was I looking for in the ability and builds and so on. And finally, he just sits back and folds his arms, and he's looking down, shaking his head. Well, these three vets started giggling. And I'm looking at them, and they're laughing at me. And I'm looking at the table leg because I can rip that off, and they won't be laughing.
It gives them a whole new kind of education.
Yeah. And Melanie jumps up, and because she'd seen me perform with a cat that's misbehaving.
Mm.
Anyway, she jumps up and she says, "We're not laughing at you. We're laughing at him." He seems pretty calm about it. Should I hit them? So he says, the reason they're laughing, he said, "This is my holiday." He says, "My agency, he's got something like 1,000 people working for him or whatever. He's a genetic wizard. And I have his name, but I can't remember it right now. Nice guy." But he said, "We've spent my business," he said, "I spent 5 years going over genetics and eventually clone an animal. But it's to deal with genetics and all that kind of stuff and cancer." He says, 5 years, I think it was 5 million he's put into this research project. And he said, "We finished it last month." And he said, "The report is that thick on all this." And he's sitting there looking at me and he says, "You just read it to me."
The $5 million project.
He says, "I can't believe some bush ape can do what took me $5 million." He says, "How you've built and genetically, it's unbelievable."
Yeah.
So then Melanie says, "Could we take sperm from your dogs and take it to the States?" And I said, "Well, that ain't that easy." Back then, it wasn't that easy. And I said, "Well, what for?" And she said, "Because if this line of dogs disappeared, you're the one that have them all. If they disappear, there'll be a subspecies of animals that has gone extinct. So we'd like to take them and store it just in case." Which may or may not be the case. But anyway, I said, okay. So they flew in what they needed, and we brought 3 or 4 of the hounds up from the kennel, and then we did it in the kitchen. And they got their samples and flew back down to the States.
How long will something like that keep?
I think pretty much forever.
Really?
The frozen sperm.
Okay.
I tried to get some back because there was a couple of those males I wanted to bring back in,
You bet.
and I couldn't. They wouldn't do it. So,
It's their
but
property now.
whatever. But see, back in the day, it was really tough to freeze sperm, dog sperm, and normally they couldn't do it. But they said, she laughed and she says, we can, which was a surprise. They used egg yolk.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Interesting.
yeah. They don't now,
Yeah, I'm sure.
but back then they do. And they took a drop of sperm, put it on a glass, and then looked at it under the microscope. And Melanie puts it underneath, and she looks at it, and she hollers, "Look at this!" And I didn't know what they were looking at, but anyway, she said, "This is amazing." The little ball or dab of sperm on the glass was doing this, and she said, "I've never seen sperm not wound up. Like, this is
my
crazy."
goodness.
Yeah, yeah, it impressed them all that how like the male dogs could produce that much and that wound up. So
Yeah.
that was kind of neat.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
But we've probably got now 8 or 10 of the top males froze and in the
Good.
coast, and we have access to that when we want. And we're going to take another trip down here in the next month or two to get some more out of what we're holding right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, what was your first dog? Who was your first dog? I think so. You and your dad. It's not like you guys were hunting together all the time when you were little.
No.
Your dad was busy. You're
Yep.
a young dyslexic guy. I won't call you what I was going to call you. We keep it PG
I
here.
was special then.
Yeah, that's right.
I probably still am. But no, my life was taking care of the dogs. I loved the dogs growing up. So I would play with the pups and make little drags and do all kinds of stuff. But I never got one of the old man's dogs until I would have been about 13, 14. So if somebody had a dog they wanted to give away or whatever, he'd give it to me, and then I would try to get it to do something. And part of that was, I agree, he wanted me to learn the difference. I gotta go pee.
Dan, you can't say that stuff on the podcast.
No?
We can't. I don't think we can pause it. Well, what we could do, we're at an hour, so if you got to go that bad, we can let you go, and then we can regroup for another podcast.
No, we'll stick with it. Jeez.
I'm sorry, guys. Dan's got bladder issues.
No, I don't. I've been drinking half a gallon of coffee.
Okay, we'll go for just we'll go for just a little bit longer. I want you to talk about your first hounds, that experience, and then we'll let you have a bathroom break.
Okay.
And the listeners can have their bathroom break also.
Yeah. Okay. So I would play with these call dogs, and I'd walk for 5 miles to go to a creek and a slough to hunt coon, and these things did nothing. So finally, when I was 13 or whatever, 14, and he had a litter of pups, and he let me have one called Mike, or I called him Mike. And I babysat him and played with him and made drags, and then I started hunting, going down to the swamp and hunt coons, and I'd wait, or lucky if it snowed, and then I could follow a coon track until it got fresh, and then let him smell it, and I'd climb the tree and poke the coon out, and he'd chase it, and we'd tree it, and at that time, coon hides were $5 each, so I'd club the coon and skin it. And one day, Dad got a call of a cougar. He was hunting cougar all the time, but this day it was at Boston Bar, up in the canyon, Fraser Canyon, and a guy had a Samoy, I think it was, on his porch, and the cougar bailed on it, and he heard it right away, and I think it was a 22, and he went out and shot the cougar, tried to shoot it, and it spit the dog out and ran away. So my father asked me if I wanted to go. So yeah. So we left in the morning, went up. We had to take a cable car across the river at Boston Bar and then get to the guy's place. And he was telling the old man that, no, it's probably dead. I shot it. So Dad's looking around. There's no blood.
Mm.
And there's a track, the patchy snow, and the track went up the hill. So he let the dogs go, and I let my pup go, which was, he had been a year old probably then. And he had never seen a cougar, but I'd played with them with the hides. So they went up the mountain, and it went a fair ways. And pretty soon could hear him treed. And Mike, my dog, was just giving her. Like, he was really performing. So I'm pretty happy. And
Chest all
Dad's
puffed out.
dogs, yep, my dad's dogs were treeing, but not right, as much as the pup. So we finally get up there, and it's in a big fir that's growing up along the side of a rock bluff. And my dog Mike is looking at it pretty much straight across. The other dogs never got up the bluff, but Mike did. So he's performing. So we gathered up the dogs and went up onto the bluff where Mike was, and my dad was tying them back. There wasn't much for trees, so we're jamming rocks in the dogs' leashes down in the cracks of the rocks and stuff. And I got off to the corner, off to the side, and it was there was the flat spot at the base of the tree about 3 foot by 4 foot, and that was it. So we up the hill a bit, tied everything up, and my dog leash was, I had braided a couple of pieces of binder twine, and I had my dog tied up, and I'm hanging on to him, sitting in the rocks. And my father decided to get rid of some old shells he had, and he put them in this 357 pistol, and he shoots at the cat, and it goes just a funny boof, and the bullet hit the cat and bounced off. And all that did, it pissed us off. So it climbs down the tree, and Mike broke his leash and got down at the base of the tree with the cat, and now the cat's got Mike. I grabbed a rock, and I slid down, and I smashed the cat on the head with the rock, and it spit Mike out. And then the next thing I know, I hit the cat, and it let go of Mike, and I grabbed Mike by the collar or the neck. And the next thing I know is I got a 357 Smith & Wesson 6-inch barrel smashed against the side of my head, knocks me off to the side. I think I went down one level, but I still had Mike. And he was reloading. But that give him time. He managed to get a shell in and killed the cat. But so that was my first cat hunt.
You were how old?
I'd have been 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
But
man.
there again, you never lose.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. Yeah. And your dad too, he had to make some fast decisions there. Get you out of
What's
the way.
that?
Your dad too, he had to make some fast decisions there.
That's right.
Get things handled
Because
quickly.
the cat, I hit him with the rock. He spit the dog out, and now he's looking at me.
Yeah, yeah.
But all I was going to do was punch him, which he'd have ate my hand. But
You were gonna give him hell though.
that's right. He'd have known he was in a fight. Yeah. But my pup was actually. Did you want to show him that picture?
Yeah.
Of
Hey,
Mike?
Kelly? We got Kelly here listening in the background, or peanut gallery. Kelly, would you be so kind as to grab us the picture of Mike?
Kyle's
I think he's
Kelly's
up there.
special.
Yeah. Kelly, my
gotta do
fiance, our
everything.
other head injury victim. We're going to get him on the podcast one of these days too.
Nobody knows I'm a head injury victim.
Not yet, but we're going to get to it in one of these episodes.
Where do you show this up on
Just just hold it up to the screen there. Oh yeah, got to wipe it off. Make it look all shiny. Let's see if we
This
can see
is
her.
me and my first dog.
Maybe pull it back just a little bit. Yeah, that's a little better. There we go. Oh, there's little Dan and little Mike. Was he a walker?
What? We're done. These dogs are a mix of red bone, black and tan, blue tick, and bloodhound.
Sorry, I couldn't help
And
myself.
yeah, I know. You could join the special ops too. Apps.
Inside joke, guys. Inside joke. We're gonna get to
Yeah.
that on another episode. Okay. Well, we're at an hour and 10 minutes here. I think Dan needs a bathroom break.
Nope, I give
honestly,
up.
we could. Dan peed his pants, I think.
Oh,
No, we're gonna keep this rolling. We have many more episodes with Dan Lay to come because honestly, there is just so darn much to cover. Just a life filled with stories like what you just heard. This is just a small little snippet, a small little sampling, but we're gonna get into more of the dog lineage, more about cats, wolf trapping, grizzly snaring, you name it. So you're going to want to stay tuned for these upcoming episodes. So Dan, I'm going to let you go for your bathroom break, and
no,
we're going
I'm
to
okay now.
No, we're good. We're going to
Yeah.
reconvene for episode number
Just
2.
before we end for this one deal.
Sure.
There's going to be stories on this, but every story is going to have a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
There's whether it regards to people's or animals, predator and prey, that are going to be they'll be in the story, and we'll try to explain the meaning to different stuff.
For sure. Yeah. If you're
Yeah.
listening, this is something that is going to be tremendously educational.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So pay attention, folks. Okay, Dan. Till next time.
Thank you.